to introduce our next speakers who are here to discuss some wonderful resources and information from Edgewise Therapeutics. Katherine Krieger is the Director of Patient Advocacy with Edgewise Therapeutics, and Sarah Tencer is the Associate Director of Patient Advocacy with Edgewise. Hi, Katherine and Sarah. Thank you so much for being here today. Sorry, we're running a little bit late, but we are really looking forward to your presentation.
Hi, can you hear us? We'll make sure
Yes.
our audio is working.
Working
We
okay?
can hear you.
Great. Well, we're really excited to be here. I can steal the screen and pull up the slides, and we'll see if that works for everybody. And in the meantime, Sarah, you can introduce yourself, and then we won't have to worry about it once the slides are up.
Yeah, wonderful. My name is Sarah. I live in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and also work on the patient advocacy team at Edgewise.
Okay, great. Can everybody see my screen?
Yep, it's working.
Awesome. Okay. Well, thanks everybody for joining us today. And what a wonderful conversation about cardiac considerations in Becker, which we know is such an important aspect of care. We're really excited to join you today. A little bit of a surprise here at the end. But my colleague Sarah and I are going to really be presenting about Edgewise and how we've been working with the Becker community to elevate your voices and experiences throughout all of our efforts to develop a Becker therapy. We're not going to be talking about our trials today. We're not going to be giving out any medical advice, more just focusing on what we've learned from you guys in the community and what that has helped us to do within our team and in our company. So I'll move to the next slide. We'll do some quick introductions of who we are from an advocacy team. Our patient team has a really long history in the neuromuscular disease space. It's led by Abby Bronson, who previously worked at the Parent Project Muscular Dystrophy. And then Sarah and I both worked at MDA for many, many years, both through the camp programs with clinics and with clinicians across the country. So we're thrilled to be working for a company that focuses on Becker and Duchenne, as this community is super important to us. So Sarah's going to be co-presenting with me today throughout this webinar, so you're going to hear from her as well. So at Edgewise, our mission is to discover new medicines that improve the lives of people facing muscle disease. We were actually founded in 2017 and have since been developing therapies that target the muscle in Becker and Duchenne. Our company is specifically focused on the muscle injury that occurs during muscle contraction in individuals that are living with Becker and Duchenne. So we're studying these approaches to how can we protect that muscle from that contraction injury, which occurs in daily activities for those living with Becker and Duchenne. And our goal is that our daily oral pill could be used alone or in combination with other therapies. And again, this is regardless of mutation. So now that you've heard our quick little snippet about who we are, I'm actually going to turn it over to Sarah, who's going to give you a quick overview of the types of research that exist for those living with Becker and in the general research landscape. And we know that there are many types of studies. So really knowing the terminology as a community can help you as you hear about these types of research and other aspects of care in Becker. So just a quick run through of some studies. Sarah, I'll pass it to you.
Absolutely. And as Catherine mentioned, we're not going to be talking specifically about our trial today. We more so want to do some general education about what you might come across if you're looking into trials, if you're doing research to find out what might be available for you. We know there's a lot of information out there, and sometimes it's very technical and uses a lot of terminology that might not be familiar if you haven't been exposed to it before. So we want to go over a little bit of that today. If you do have questions about our specific trial, we'll have a slide at the end that has an inbox and our website and stuff like that. So happy to get you connected to find out more information. So starting here with kind of this slide style Becker Research 101. So at Edgewise, we do have clinical trials in both Becker and Duchenne muscular dystrophy. And we know that learning about and making decisions about trials can be really overwhelming. So that's part of why we want to do this overview today to hopefully familiarize you a little bit with the different types and what those different words might be. So to start off, there's 4 different types that we're going to talk about today. The first is registries, natural history studies, interventional studies or clinical trials, and then open label extensions, which kind of fall under that interventional study umbrella, but mean something a little bit different. We want to make sure that we specifically call that out. Clinical research across all four types of these is incredibly important for rare diseases like Becker. Research is how we learn and improve our understanding of the disease, and patient participation is really important at every step of the way, whether that's participating in the study or giving feedback to companies who are doing the studies, which Katherine will talk a little bit about later on. So first of all, registries. These are a standardized way of collecting data, and then that data set can be used to support the development and planning of research studies. Uh, this type of information can help with identifying patterns in diseases. It can provide real-world information. It can help establish a need that researchers can then go set out to meet or to find an answer to a question. And there's two primary types of registries. One is patient reported and one is physician reported. The names are pretty self-explanatory, but just to say anyways, a patient-reported registry is one where either the individual living with the disease or someone providing care to them is physically going in and entering the information into the database. So in those, you may be providing some real-life lived examples of what that looks like for you. And then the other one is this physician-reported registry. And that's one where a doctor who maybe provides care to a lot of different people living with the same condition may participate in a registry. And then they or someone on their care team is the one that's going in and inputting that information about the patients that they're seeing. And then they can use that individually to kind of track and recognize patterns, as I mentioned, or that can be kind of included into a larger data set. All right. And then next, I'm going to talk about natural history studies. These are so important. They are not interventional, which means that you're not taking any sort of drug or getting any sort of therapy. And they help us to understand the course of disease and what that looks like without intervention and what that looks like throughout someone's life. So these studies observe patients over a longer period of time, and they look at things like disease onset, what those symptoms look like over time, how they might progress, and what that impact on day-to-day life might look like. There's currently an ongoing natural history study for Becker that is specifically using MRI to learn more about disease progression in Becker. So we just heard about how cardiac MRI is being used more and more in the cardiac space to help evaluate cardiac care. But other MRI, muscle MRI, can also help with evaluating what that progression looks like. And these studies are incredibly important for informing all stages of product development, including clinical trials like ours. They can inform care decisions, and they can also help us understand how interventions are working or how they're not working. So trials will often compare their outcomes to what's been previously observed or being currently observed in these natural history studies to show the impact of the intervention. So without natural history data, you can't really make that comparison to say, this is how the drug is working or how it's not working compared to what it would look like if you weren't taking the drug. So very important for participation, very important for research. And then lastly, I wanted to talk about interventional studies or clinical trials. And if you're looking into a trial, you'll notice there's a lot of different terminology out there. There's a lot here we spell out what the different phases are, but it can be stressful to look and kind of figure out what is it this trial is doing, how far along is it, what have they previously done? And so that's what we wanted to walk through a little bit of today. So if you see a trial that says that it's preclinical, that is one that is likely not being treated to patients yet. Like it's not targeting patients yet. It's more so happening in a lab and just looking at it on a very small scope. And then in a phase 1 trial, that specifically looks at safety and side effects in a relatively small group. And this can either be on individuals who are living with the condition, healthy volunteers, or a combination of both. And then if a phase 1 trial is promising, it can move into a phase 2 trial. And this continues to gather data to understand if the treatment is effective in people who are living with the specific condition or disease. So this one is exclusively targeting folks who have the disease, so it doesn't include those healthy volunteers. And a lot of times they're looking at multiple different doses. And so these trials are trying to identify what is the most effective and the most safe dose of this specific or therapy that we can move that forward on. And so again, safety is a very big part of this one. Safety is a big thing throughout, but like at the beginning, that's kind of the primary thing that you're looking at. And then you start to look more at that effectiveness. So if that one's successful, then the trial would move on to a phase 3 or potentially a pivotal cohort, which is another type of phase 2, but they kind of get lumped together. And so this is looking at larger numbers. So starting to look more at effectiveness across a larger scale. And a lot of times this one will start to compare the investigational treatment to potentially other commonly used treatments, or if there's an established standard of care, it would start to look at that comparison as well, just to say how much more effective, or is this more effective than what the patients currently have access to. And then phase 4 or post-marketing, this just continues to collect information on risks and benefits in kind of a longer term setting after the treatment has been approved by the FDA. So just a way to continue to collect information. And then the one that I mentioned earlier that kind of falls under this bucket but is slightly separate is what's called an open label extension. And that is another type of study where individuals who have previously participated and finished one of these other phases can continue to access the study drug after the randomized phase. So this is earlier on, you may be on a placebo or you may have the investigational therapy. And then everyone who has completed that, who continues to be eligible, so hasn't had any like complications come up in their life or changes that would impact that, can then all have access to the study drug if they choose to participate in the open label extension. You're not required to. This is something that you would opt into. And it serves two purposes. One is that anyone, whether they receive the placebo or the active treatment, can continue to access the study drug if they choose to and if they continue to be eligible. And then it also allows the company to continue to see the long-term effects and to continue to see the effectiveness and the safety beyond what that initial study period is. So I'm going to pass it back over to Katherine. If you have questions along the way, or if you want us to go back or want us to go a little bit deeper into any of those, definitely feel free to put something in and we can always shift a little bit. But Katherine's going to speak now about how at Edgewise, we have connected with the community both to inform our decisions along the way with all of these research studies. We find it very important for patients to be a part of that process. But then we also know that there are needs outside of just receiving a treatment. So we've been working with the community to see how we can kind of holistically support the Becker community. So back to you, Katherine.
Thanks, Sarah. So as research continues to develop for Becker and the Becker community, it will be really important for companies, including Edgewise, to connect and learn from the Becker community to ensure that our efforts are addressing the needs of those living with this disease. So we're going to share some ways that the patient advocacy team can support research, but specifically what we're doing here at Edgewise. So at Edgewise, we're developing a potential therapy for Becker, but beyond that, we're committed to supporting the Becker community by first listening to your experiences and your needs. So as we develop resources and materials, we collaborate with community members to develop Becker-specific education. We support connection opportunities for those living with Becker to connect in person and virtually, like this webinar. In an event you might have heard of, the Becker Education and Engagement Day, or BEAD. So we'll talk about that a little bit later. But without engaging with the community, we would not be effective in our mission. So we've conducted many efforts to learn from the Becker community through focus groups, advisory boards, in-depth one-on-one interviews, and qualitative surveys, but also by attending events that are focused on Becker and just listening. So besides our understanding of the science behind Becker that we have, this work has allowed us to learn how the heterogeneous nature of Becker, or in other terms, the fact that it impacts everyone so differently and the disease course can vary so widely, makes it difficult to plan long-term and even seek appropriate care. So That and making the mental health impact of navigating a long-term and unknown progression. We know that's significant. We've heard loud and clear that the day-to-day impact really extends beyond what we would measure in like a clinical setting, that score on a test within a doctor's office. It makes an impact actually every day in those small things. So we understand that that is an overall experience that is having, not that we can really measure by a test. And then we also know that cardiac health and then loss of mobility are viewed as the most concerning aspects of the disease. So great to hear more about cardiac care. And then we've taken all the data from all of that work, and then we integrate that into our development and our partnerships with community groups. So this year we completed a survey of over 50 individuals in the Becker community, and that allowed us to develop some educational materials to support community members, but then also to support clinicians and making sure that they have an understanding of the Becker patient experience. We take this data, we develop posters to present at healthcare and patient-focused conferences. We publish certain work. All of this really aims to inform the larger community about key aspects of Becker and elevate your experience. We also engage with the community quite often through many other avenues. We have a series called Living in the Light, which features stories of individuals living with Becker. You can check them out at that QR code. And we also have a standing Becker Community Council. This consists of individuals living with Becker and caregivers to adolescents living with Becker. These advisors help us in so many ways. They help us to gain direct feedback on aspects of our trial design, our materials. They identify different community education needs, gaps that they haven't been able to find a certain resource. They bring that to us, and they also help us to ensure that all of the materials and the language that we use are relevant and understandable to the community. So this group has been really wonderful in informing many aspects of what we do here at Edgewise. So we're committed to supporting the Becker community have Becker-specific education. We have many avenues in which we do this, and one is a disease-specific education website, beckermusculardystrophy.com. We have developed educational videos that explain the disease process in Becker, more to come on that soon. And we put additional educational content into quests. We hear from advisors that we have, okay, we would love to know more about research. We'd love to know about the terminology we're going to need to know when we reinitiate care, et cetera. We try to provide outlines like that within our quest articles that we do through MDA, and just more about research and care in general. And we are very proud to be a member of the steering committee for the Becker Education and Engagement Day, which is on this slide. So the Becker Education and Engagement Day, we call it BEAD for short, was developed in 2023 when advocates, clinicians, researchers, and the Becker community members decided we need a Becker-specific education day for individuals. And so in 2023, we had 150 people at 4 locations across the US. And then this year, we had 6 locations and over doubled our attendance with 330 people attending across the United States. The day went into great detail about Becker care considerations, a really great presentation on cardiac care, exercise considerations and physical therapy in Becker, research, and then a whole afternoon on planning for the future, mental wellness, and really featuring talks on employment, insurance, and then mobility equipment. My personal favorite part of the day, having attended the last 2 years, is always the panel of Becker community members that share their experience and take questions from the audience and really just have that engagement within the community with one another. The event has been really well received over the last 2 years, but the 2024 event far exceeded expectations and gathered individuals from over 31 states. 12 different hospitals and institutions were represented through speakers, and over, again, 330 folks were from the community were there to learn and connect. So more information about 2025 event will be updated on their website, the BEAD website, and that can be found at that QR code or beckereducationandengagement.com. And Edgewise has been really happy to support this event. It provides such a special opportunity for individuals with Becker to connect in a space that's designed specifically for them. We hope to see everyone there. I'm going to turn it to Sarah to talk about a few more education resources so we can wrap up.
Yep. So as we wrap up, we wanted to share some of our specific resources that we've created. And these have been a community effort. It's hearing from people in the community, whether it's at events or through our patient councils, about where there might be more educational needs, and then also working with those same folks to help generate content that helps meet that need. And so two things that we've done in that space, we've created these educational animated videos. One is on the disease process in Becker and Duchenne muscular dystrophy, and we're going to play that one for you in a little bit, but you can also find it on the QR code here that goes to our YouTube channel. And then we also have heard from several people that they were not familiar with or didn't really understand the use of the North Star Ambulatory Assessment, which is something used really regularly, both in clinical care, but in clinical trials as well. And so understanding what to expect and what that means is something that is really important in making decisions about your care. And so there's an animated video about that as well through that QR code. And then we also recently did a webinar through MDA, and you can find that webinar through their website, mda.org, and then search through for the industry update webinars to find both this animated video, but then also hearing from our chief medical officer as well as a physical therapist that we've worked closely with to share in a bit more detail about the NSAA. So if we go to the next slide, we're going to play our video for you.
And why they sometimes don't. Our muscles do a lot of work for us. We all know they make movement possible. Every muscle is made of thousands of long strands that contract, creating movement in the body. These contractions put a strain on the system, leading to little tears in the muscle fibers. This is called contraction-induced injury, and it happens to everybody. It's why people can feel sore after exercising. Protecting muscles from too much injury is where certain proteins, including dystrophin, have a vital role to play. Ah, yes, there he is. Look at him go. These proteins connect our muscle fibers together so that strain on muscles is spread evenly when the muscle contracts, similar to threads in a rope working together to strengthen and stabilize the muscle. When muscles are working properly, tearing is minimal and repair is quick. Soon the damaged muscle is back online, doing what it needs to do. Sometimes key parts of the muscle are not working, so the muscle is susceptible to damage from muscle contraction. We see this in muscular dystrophy, a group of diseases that includes Becker and Duchenne muscular dystrophy. In these diseases, dystrophin is only partially functioning, as seen in people living with Becker. Oh, yes. Or totally absent, as seen in people living with Duchenne. That means that when muscles contract, force from the contraction isn't spread out over the muscle, which can damage the muscle fibers. In contrast, in fully functioning muscles, muscle contraction doesn't cause excessive injury. But in people with Becker and Duchenne, damage can be more frequent and severe when their muscles are contracting. The muscle membrane can become leaky and let unwanted visitors like calcium inside the muscle cell, causing a complete fiber breakdown. Over time, the muscle gets inflamed, and instead of being able to repair itself, scar tissue and fat are laid down. When this happens, we often see muscles swelling at first from the stress and then shrinking as they become less effective and are used less. This muscle wasting is also called atrophy. Damaged muscle fibers don't do their job and are weak, which puts more strain on the remaining fibers whenever they contract, resulting in a cycle of continued muscle damage. Over time, the impact of muscle damage caused by contraction in Becker and Duchenne causes loss of muscle and therefore loss of strength and function. Moving around becomes harder. Standing up and walking become a challenge or sometimes impossible, and many people need a mobility device to get around. Although there's no cure for Becker or Duchenne today, medical researchers are looking for treatments with urgency and focus.
Protecting muscle is a key goal in muscular dystrophy research, and there are many ideas being explored to protect muscle from injury. caused by muscle contraction and to preserve function, to improve the lives of those with Becker and Duchenne muscular dystrophy. In the meantime, the progression of Becker and Duchenne can be best managed through working with your care team to identify options for protecting and preserving muscles. Your doctor and care team can help you monitor your disease or that of your child and build the most effective plan to manage it.
So there's our website there, the edgewisetx.com. And again, that can be found at our YouTube channel. But the last thing we wanted to share about is how important our partnerships like those groups like MDA are to supporting our efforts in the Becker community. Some of the ways that we partner with MDA are sponsoring and participating in MDA Engage events or webinars like this one. We collaborate on the Becker Education and Engagement Day that Katherine was just speaking about. MDA is also part of that steering committee and works very closely there. We work with their Quest team to create either ads about our trials or just create articles about topics of interest that we've heard from the community to try to provide more education and shine a little bit more of a spotlight on Becker. And then we host industry update webinars with MDA for both the patient and for the clinician communities. So the one I mentioned earlier about the North Star Ambulatory Assessment is now on demand on the MDA website, so that can be found. We also have a QR code here to Quest Magazine to see some of our previous articles. But that wraps up what we wanted to share today. Just wanted to give a little bit of an overview of general research and terms there, and then how our team is integrated into that in collaboration with the community, so with folks like you. So if you do want to learn more about our trials, you're welcome to reach out to that studies@edgewisetx.com email address that's on the slide. Katherine and I can also put our emails in the chat if you want to reach out about any of our other initiatives or any of the things we talked about today. And then we also have our website there and are on all of these social media channels. And so you're welcome to follow us there. But thank you for sticking around and listening to us today. And if there's any questions or anything that you'd like for us to go back to, please let us know.
Thank you so much, Katherine and Sarah.